Banished by the Galactic Council. Humans forged the most powerful empire. Instead, Part 1, the sky over Mars Station Delta, burned with the colors of retreat. Crimson flares marked the last civilian shuttles lifting off from the red dust plains below, their exhaust trails curling like smoke signals to a dying era. On the command deck, Commander Dale McKinney watched the countdown on his screen with quiet eyes. 10 minutes until the Galactic Council's deadline. 10 minutes until every human vessel had to vanish beyond the Orion Veil or be declared hostile. He rubbed his temple, the weight of silence heavier than any explosion. Outside the viewport, the Council's peacekeepers hovered in perfect formation. Sleek silver cruisers with no weapons drawn. Yet their presence alone was a blade at humanity's throat. It had started with a misunderstanding. Or so the Council claimed. A skirmish near the Helios Rift where human scouts had mapped a new jump route. The Council said it was trespassing. Humans said it was exploration. Words turned to warnings. Warnings to blockades and blockades to bloodshed. When a Cathari patrol ship was disabled by a human frigate using an unregistered pulse scrambler, the Council convened an emergency session. Within 72 hours, they issued the edict. Humanity was too volatile, too unpredictable, too dangerous to share the stars with civilized species. Earth and all its colonies were stripped of interstellar rights. All human assets beyond Sol System were to be confiscated. All citizens ordered into exile beyond the Veil. A vast empty stretch of space long deemed useless, even cursed by older races, Dale had argued. So had the ambassadors. But the Council's verdict was final. No appeals. No negotiations. Just a cold, digital scroll stamped with the sigils of 23 alien governments. Now, as the last of the evacuees boarded the Ark-class carriers, Dale felt the hollowness of defeat settle in his chest. Not because they lost a war. They never really fought one. But because they were erased without a trial, without dignity on the lower deck. Dr. Lila Holt supervised the final data purge. Rows of quantum servers blinked red as terabytes of research vanished into encrypted voids. She had spent 12 years studying dark matter fluctuations near Neptune's rings, work that could have unlocked clean energy for 1,000 worlds. Now it would either be deleted or handed over to the Vinari, the Council's science overseers, who would likely bury it in some archive labeled Primitive Anomaly. She pressed a button and the last server went dark. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from anger. Quiet, simmering anger that refused to boil over but wouldn't fade either. The fleet gathered in loose formation beyond Mars orbit. 83 ships of all classes, from battered freighters to half-finished warships retrofitted for survival. No flag flew on their hulls. No anthem played over comms, just the hum of engines and the static of distant stars. Dale gave the order. Set course for the Veil. Maximum safe speed. The fleet moved as one, a slow exodus into the unknown. Behind them, the Council ships did not follow. They simply watched as if witnessing the burial of a failed experiment. Crossing the Veil's boundary felt like passing through a curtain of cold glass. Sensors flickered. Comms distorted. Even the stars seemed dimmer, as if the universe itself had turned its back. The Veil was not empty as the Council claimed, but it was empty of life. No planets, no stations, no signals, just asteroid fields, dead comets, and the occasional ghost echo of ancient radiation. For weeks, the fleet drifted, rationing fuel, recycling air, holding meetings in dimly lit mess halls. Morale cracked like thin ice. Some ships broke off, hoping to find hidden colonies or forgotten outposts. Most never returned. But then something changed. A distress ping from the far edge of Sector 9. Not alien. Not Council. Human. A mining vessel, the Perseverance, had been mapping gravitational ripples near a collapsed nebula when it stumbled upon something massive buried in the dust. Dale ordered a recon team. What they found defied belief. A ring-shaped structure kilometers wide made of a metal that absorbed light and emitted no heat. It bore no markings, no doors, no signs of decay, yet it hummed with residual energy. Dr. Holt joined the team within hours. Her scans revealed crystalline lattices inside the walls, pulsing with stored data. It was a relic of the Forerunners, the mythical race that had vanished millions of years before the Council rose. For the first time since exile, hope flickered. Not loud or grand, but steady, like a pilot light in a cold house. The humans began to study the structure. They called it the Cradle. Engineers from the Titan yards jury-rigged power couplings to draw energy from its core. Linguists tried to decode its symbols. Soldiers stood watch, not against enemies but against despair. Dale walked the corridors of the cradle one night, his boots echoing on smooth floors that felt warm to the touch. He thought of Earth, green hills, rainy afternoons, the smell of coffee in old diners. He wondered if anyone back home even remembered the months past. The fleet stopped drifting. They anchored near the cradle, building temporary habitats from salvaged hulls. Children were born in zero-G nurseries, gardens sprouted in repurposed cargo bays, and in secret labs lit by emergency lamps, Dr. Holt and her team made a breakthrough. The Forerunner metal responded to human neural patterns. It wasn't just a machine. It was a tool waiting for the right hand to wield it. They built their first prototype drive using a shard of the cradle's core. When activated, it bent space without fuel, without noise, without limits. Dale stood on the bridge of the newly christened vessel, the Steadfast, as it hovered above the cradle. Below, thousands of humans worked not to survive but to build. The Council had banished them to die in silence. Instead, they found a forge in the dark. And in that forge, something new began to take shape. Not just ships or weapons, but a will. Unbroken, unasked for, and utterly human, the stars ahead were still cold. But for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel empty. Banished by the Galactic Council, humans forged the most powerful empire instead. Part 2. The Orion Veil was not kind, but it was honest. It gave nothing freely, yet it hid no lies. In the first year of exile, nearly a third of the human fleet vanished. Not from war, but from hunger, system failures, or the slow unraveling of hope. Ships that drifted too far from the cradle lost contact and never returned. Families huddled in cold corridors, sharing rations and stories of a world they might never see again. Some whispered that Earth had already forgotten them. Others said the Council had erased their names from every record. But in the shadow of the ancient ring, a different kind of fire began to burn. It started with small things. A mechanic named Carlos Reyes jury-rigged a water recycler using parts from a broken medbay unit. A botanist named Mira Jenkins coaxed algae to grow under violet emergency lights, turning waste into oxygen and food. Then came the engineers from the Titan shipyards. Men and women who once built freighters for trade now bent their skills toward survival. They studied the cradle's walls, not as archaeologists but as students. The Forerunner metal responded to human touch in ways alien tech never had. It warmed when spoken to. It reshaped under focused thought. It remembered her. Lila Holt led the science teams, but she never claimed authority. She listened more than she spoke. When a young astrophysicist named Nora Ellis suggested the cradle wasn't just a structure, but a node in a vast network, Lila didn't dismiss her. She ran the numbers herself. And the numbers agreed. Gravitational echoes from deep within the veil matched the cradle's frequency. There were more ruins out there. Dozens, maybe hundreds, scattered like seeds across the void. The Forerunners hadn't died. They had left. And they had left tools behind. Fleet Admiral Raymond Cruz arrived 6 months after the exile began. He had been commanding a deep-range patrol near Pluto when the decree hit. Instead of surrendering his ship, he'd gone dark, gathering stragglers, scavenging supplies, and fighting off pirates who thought exiled humans were easy prey. By the time he reached the cradle, his vessel, the Iron Resolve, was patched with hull plates from 5 different ships. But his crew was loyal, hardened, and ready to follow him anywhere. When he stepped onto the main platform of the cradle, he didn't salute. He simply said, "We're not leaving." And no one argued Cruz didn't believe in waiting. While others debated ethics or mourned the past, he organized work crews, set up defense perimeters, and launched scouting missions into the deeper veil. His strategy was simple. Find resources, secure them, build something better. When Nora Ellis proposed using Forerunner alloy to reinforce ship frames, Cruz gave her a full bay and 20 volunteers. Within weeks, they forged their first quantum-laced hull plate. It was lighter than steel, stronger than diamond, and healed microfractures on its own. They called it Echo Steel. The first true breakthrough came when they powered a ship with a resonance core, a sphere of crystalline Forerunner matter that pulsed in time with human brainwaves. It didn't need fuel. It drew energy from subspace itself, humming softly like a lullaby. The ship, christened the Aegis, lifted off without flame or roar. It simply rose, smooth and silent, and vanished into the dark. When it returned 3 days later, it had mapped 3 new ruins and brought back enough raw material to build 2 more cores. Morale shifted. Not overnight, but steadily. People stopped calling themselves refugees. They called themselves builders. Soldiers trained not just to fight, but to protect what they were creating. Children learned engineering before history. And in the central chamber of the cradle, a new symbol was etched into the floor. a circle with a single line through it, representing unity and forward motion. No one declared it official. It just appeared one morning, carved by many hands, but the veil held dangers too. Not from aliens, the council had not followed, but from the ruins themselves. Some structures emitted psychic static that caused nightmares or memory loss. Others activated without warning, opening rifts that swallowed drones whole. During one mission, a scout team entered a pyramid-shaped vault and never came out. Their last transmission was a single word: awake. After that, crews ordered all explorations to be done in pairs with neural dampeners worn at all times still. Progress could not be stopped. Shipyards rose from salvaged hulls, anchored to asteroids for stability. Farms grew in rotating rings lit by artificial suns, and in a hidden bay beneath the cradle's lowest level, the first dreadnought took shape. It was twice the size of any human vessel ever built, its spine lined with echo-steel ribs, its heart a resonance core the size of a house. They named it the Sovereign, not out of pride, but promised Nora Ellis spent sleepless nights refining the core's interface. She discovered that the more minds linked to it, the stronger it became. So she designed a neural sync system that allowed entire crews to share focus, reaction, and intent. In battle simulations, a single pilot could maneuver a fighter like a thought. A gunner could track 10 targets at once. It wasn't mind control, it was harmony. And it was uniquely human. Dale McKinney, now serving as Cruz's strategic advisor, watched the transformation with quiet awe. He had once believed exile was the end. Now he saw it as a crucible. The council had cast them out thinking they would break. Instead, they were being remade, harder, sharper, and far more dangerous than before. One evening, as the Sovereign's hull glowed under construction lamps, Cruz stood beside Lila Holt on an observation ledge. "They think we're gone," he said. "They think we're dust." She nodded, her eyes on the stars beyond the veil. "Let them think that," she replied. "While they sleep, we build. And build they did. Not just ships, but a new way of living. Not just survival, but purpose. The Terran remnant was no longer a collection of lost souls. It was a seed. And in the silent dark of the Orion Veil, that seed began to sprout roots of iron and fire. The council had banished them to nothing. But humans had a habit of making something from nothing. And what they were making now would one day shake the stars. Banished by the Galactic Council, humans forged the most powerful empire instead. Part 3 years passed in the Veil, not marked by calendars but by milestones. The first harvest from the orbital farms, the maiden flight of the Sovereign, the day the neural sync network linked all major ships into a single responsive web. The Terran remnant no longer whispered about returning home. They spoke of what lay beyond. While the Galactic Council debated trade routes and ceremonial succession on their polished orbital thrones, humanity had become something else entirely. Quiet, efficient, unseen. The Council believed the Veil was a prison. They never imagined it was a forge, and they certainly never expected the silence to be a weapon. It began with small disruptions. A Cathari scout vessel near the Veil's edge reported a sudden loss of navigation. Its systems rebooted cleanly, but its logs showed no cause. Then a Venari science buoy went dark. Not destroyed, its power core was intact, its data untouched, but its thrusters had been rerouted to point it toward deep space, as if gently pushed away. The Council dismissed it as solar flares or rogue comets, until a full patrol wing vanished for 3 days and reappeared drifting near the Helios Rift. Every weapon disarmed, every crew unharmed but confused. No message was sent, no demands made. Just a pattern emerging like frost on glass. Admiral Raymond Cruz called it deterrence without violence. Dr. Nora Ellis called it demonstration. Dale McKinney simply called it necessary. The remnant had no interest in war, not yet, but they needed the Council to understand one thing. The Veil was no longer empty, and humanity was no longer weakest cloaked Aegis-class frigates powered by resonance cores. Human teams executed precision operations that left no trace but results. They bypassed shield harmonics using echo-steel resonators. They disabled targeting arrays with focused neural pulses that mimicked system errors. They boarded enemy ships not with guns but with logic, rewriting access codes from the inside while crews slept. Every action was surgical, silent, and reversible. The goal was not to kill but to show that they could. The Council grew uneasy. High Executor Zirak of the Cathari demanded an investigation. Surveillance drones were deployed along the Veil's perimeter, yet every time they approached too close they malfunctioned. Cameras blurred, sensors misread, propulsion stalled. Once a drone returned with its memory core wiped clean except for a single human phrase etched in binary. Mind your borders. Panic spread through the council chambers. Rumors flew of a new predator in the dark. Some claimed it was a rogue AI. Others whispered of ancient Forerunner guardians reawakening. Not one considered it might be humans. They had seen humanity's ships, clunky, loud, reliant on brute force. They could not fathom the quiet revolution that had taken root in exile. But the remnant was not just hiding. They were learning. From captured council logs, they mapped fleet rotations, communication frequencies, and political fractures. They discovered that the Vinari resented the Cathari's dominance, that the Selthi wanted independence, that the council's unity was a fragile shell. Nora Ellis proposed a new strategy, not to fight the council, but to expose its weakness to itself. So the operations grew bolder. A council supply convoy bound for a disputed colony found its cargo swapped, weapons replaced with food, fuel with water. A diplomatic envoy's shuttle arrived at its destination with its encrypted files unlocked and translated into every major language, revealing secret bribes and backroom deals. Each act was a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading wider than intended. On Earth, long thought silent, a faint signal broke through the council's jamming. It was weak, fragmented, but unmistakably human. A resistance cell, small but stubborn, had survived. They sent coordinates, names, and a single plea. Don't forget us. Crews ordered a covert extraction. Using a resonance tunnel, a stable wormhole opened by 3 linked cores. A team slipped past the Sol blockade, retrieved the survivors, and vanished before alarms could sound. The rescued included a young engineer named Jesse Cole, who would later design the first phase shield for human fighters. Meanwhile, Lila Holt and her team perfected the resonance core's range. They learned to stabilize wormholes for hours, even days, creating hidden lanes through space that only human ships could navigate. The Veil was no longer a cage, it was a highway. And humanity was building exits. The final test came when a council armada, led by Zirak himself, moved to annex a neutral system rich in rare minerals. The remnant watched from the dark. When the invasion began, human frigates appeared not in front of the fleet but behind it. They severed comms, scrambled targeting, and disabled engines all within 90 seconds. Then they broadcast a single message across every channel. Leave or next time we won't be kind, Zirak raged. He demanded retaliation, but his own allies hesitated. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see? Who strikes without hate and leaves without taking? The council's image of control began to crack back in the Veil. The Sovereign prepared for its first true mission. Not war, but warning. Cruz stood on its bridge, hands clasped behind his back, watching stars scroll past. He knew the time for silence was ending. Soon, the galaxy would see what humanity had become. Not through destruction, but through undeniable presence. They had been cast out as beasts. Now they would return as architects. And the council would learn that the most dangerous force in the universe is not a weapon, but an idea that refuses to die. The remnant did not seek revenge. They sought respect. And if respect had to be carved from fear, so be it in the quiet dark. Engines hummed, minds linked, and the stars held their breath. Banished by the Galactic Council. Humans forged the most powerful empire. Instead, Part 4, the Council did not send scouts this time. They sent an armada, over 300 ships drawn from every major species under their banner, gathered at the edge of the Orion Veil. At their head flew the Cathari dreadnought Sovereign Wrath, its hull plated with ancient war steel and bristling with plasma lances. High Executor Zirak stood on its command spire, his 4 eyes fixed on the dark expanse ahead. He had promised the council chamber that this would be the final act, the cleansing of a stain, the erasure of a mistake. Humanity would not just be contained, it would be unmade. They expected ruins. They expected desperation. They expected to find a broken people huddled around dying fires begging for mercy. Instead, they found silence. As the armada crossed the Veil's threshold, their long-range sensors flickered, comms filled with static, navigation grids warped. Then, without warning, the stars themselves seemed to shift. Space folded, not violently but smoothly, like a curtain drawn aside. And from the folds emerged the Terran Dominion, not a ragged fleet of refugees, but a wall of warships. The Sovereign led them, its echo-steel hull gleaming with no light to reflect, yet radiating presence like a storm. Flanking it were 12 Aegis-class dreadnoughts, each humming with resonance cores tuned to perfect harmony. Behind them came swarms of fighters, drones, and support vessels, all moving as one organism. No signals were sent. No threats issued. They simply appeared, and the Council Armada froze as Xerek roared for attack. Plasma lances charged. Torpedo bays opened. But before a single shot could fire, the Dominion struck. Not with weapons, but with disruption. Neural pulses flooded the Council ship's networks not to destroy, but to confuse. Targeting systems locked onto friendly vessels. Shield harmonics inverted. Engines stuttered as if dreaming. Then came the drone, a small, silent, and countless. They poured from the Dominion's carriers like smoke. They did not explode. They latched onto hulls, interfaced with external ports, and rewrote code in seconds. Within minutes, over 60 Council ships lost control of their weapons. Their turrets turned inward, safeties engaged, power diverted to life support. It was not destruction. It was disarmament on a scale never imagined. Xerek ordered a retreat. Too late. Admiral Raymond Cruz gave the command from the Sovereign's bridge. Flank them at Theta 9. Disable. Do not destroy. Commander Dale McKinney led the maneuver, his ship cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. Using resonance tunnels, human frigates appeared inside the Council formation, severing command links and isolating flagships. The Cathari tried to rally, but their allies were already panicking. Finery cruisers powered down, surrendering preemptively. Stealthy corvettes broke formation. Fleeing into the dark, the battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the Council Armada was not shattered. It was humiliated. Every ship still floated. Every crew still breathed. But none could fire. None could flee, and none could deny what had just happened. Humanity had not just repelled them. It had dismantled their might with precision so clean it felt like mockery. Xerek refused to surrender. He activated his ship's self-destruct sequence. But before the core could breach, a human boarding pod latched onto the Sovereign Wrath's bridge. No explosives. No gunfire. Just a team in light armor moving with eerie calm. They bypassed bulkheads using sonic resonators, disabled guards with neural dampeners, and reached Xerek before his countdown hit 0. He expected execution. Instead, he was escorted unharmed to a shuttle. It carried him not to a prison, but to the Sovereign's observation deck. There. Cruz waited, arms crossed, eyes steady. You could have killed us all. Xerek hissed, his voice trembling with shame. We could have, Cruz replied. But we're not here to repeat your mistakes. He activated a galaxy-wide broadcast. Every system, every station, every Council world received the signal. No encryption, no delay. Just Cruz's face calm and clear as he spoke. The Galactic Council banished us for being dangerous. Today you saw what we can do. We chose not to kill. Not because we cannot, but because we will not become what you feared. We offer peace, but only if you acknowledge our sovereignty. Return all human worlds and open your archives to every species under your rule. Knowledge is not a privilege. It is a right. Then he stepped aside. Behind him, Xerek stood in chains. Not metal, but energy cuffs that could be released with a word. This is your High Executor, Cruz said. We return him to you, not as a trophy, but as proof that we do not seek conquest. We seek balance. The broadcast ended. Silence returned to the veil. But across the galaxy, something shifted. On Veneri homeworlds, scholars demanded access to sealed data vaults. On Celti colonies, workers walked off the job, chanting human phrases they'd heard in the transmission. Even within the council chamber, voices rose in dissent. How could they claim superiority when they were bested without a single life lost back in the Veil? The Dominion did not celebrate. They prepared. Shipyards worked double shifts, farms expanded, children trained in both science and ethics. They knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of something larger. Lila Holt monitored the fallout from a new orbital lab. They'll either change, she said to Nora Ellis, or they'll break. Maybe both, Nora replied, her fingers dancing over a holographic star map. But whatever comes next, we won't be alone. For the first time since exile, humanity was not the hunted. It was the standard. And the galaxy would have to decide whether to follow or fall the stars watched. And for once, they did not look away. Banished by the Galactic Council, humans forged the most powerful empire. Instead, Part 5, the Council did not fall in a day. It unraveled slowly like a rope worn thin by truth. After the broadcast, species that had bowed for centuries began to speak. The Venari opened their data vaults to their own people. The Celti declared independence. Even the Cathari, once proud and unshakable, split into factions, some demanding reform, others clinging to old ways. The Council's unity, built on secrecy and control, could not survive the light humanity had shone upon it. But humanity did not step into the void as rulers. Instead, they offered a choice. From the rebuilt orbital hub above Earth, now free of council patrols and blooming with green domes and solar rings, Admiral Raymond Cruz sent out a simple message to every known system. Join the Pact of Equals or remain apart. No demands, no threats, just an open door. The Pact was not an empire. It had no throne, no capital that commanded others. It was a network of shared knowledge, mutual defense, and open exploration. Any species could join. Any could leave. The only rule was this: no one hoards truth. No one enslaves minds, and no one stands above another by birth or blood. Earth became the heart of this new order. Not by force, but by invitation. Scientists from a dozen worlds came to study in the Universal Academy on Ceres, where Dr. Lila Holt taught classes on quantum ethics and interspecies communication. Engineers from the Titan shipyards worked alongside former Venari techs to build resonance-powered freighters that could carry food, medicine, and books to the farthest colonies. Even children played together in zero-G nurseries, speaking a mix of human slang and alien cliques, already forgetting the old divisions. Dale McKinney retired not with medals, but with quiet satisfaction. He bought a small cabin in Montana, near a lake that still held reflections of stars untouched by war. Sometimes young pilots visited him, asking how he stayed calm in the darkest hours. He never gave grand answers. Just this: we kept building, even when no one was watching. Nora Ellis, now steward of deep-range sciences, led the first joint mission beyond the galactic rim. Her ship, the Horizon, carried a crew of humans, stealthy navigators, and a Venari linguist. Their goal was not conquest, but contact. They followed faint signals from a region the Forerunners had marked as the Cradle's Echo. What they found was not ruins, but living worlds, species that had hidden from the Council for generations, fearing discovery. When the Horizon offered friendship, not scanners or weapons, the response was tears in a dozen languages. Back home, the Sovereign sat in dry dock, not as a warship, but as a museum. School groups walked its corridors, touching echo steel walls that still hummed softly. Guides told the story not of battles, but of choices. How humans could have taken revenge but chose to build instead. Yet peace was not the end of challenge. From the galactic core, where ancient stars burned cold and dense, a new signal emerged. Not organic, not council, mechanical, rhythmic, repeating every 3.7 seconds like a heartbeat made of iron. Deep scans revealed structures moving, vast, self-replicating machines, dormant for eons, now stirring. The Forerunner archives called them the Reapers, guardians turned executioners, programmed to reset civilizations that grew too powerful. The old council would have hidden this, buried the data, hoped it would pass them by. The Pact did not hide within hours. Every member world received the full analysis. Within days, a defense council formed, not of admirals, but of scientists, philosophers, and engineers. Humans shared resonance shielding. Stealthy offered stealth field tech. Finery contributed predictive algorithms. Together, they built a plan not to destroy but to understand, maybe even to stop the Reapers without war. When the first Reaper probe crossed into known space, it was met not by a fleet but by a single ship, the Horizon, flying a white banner woven from fibers of every packed world. Nora Ellis stood on the bridge, calm, as the machine scanned them. It paused. Then, impossibly, it changed course. Not away, but toward them. As if listening, no one knew what would come next. But for the first time in galactic history, no one faced it alone. On Earth. In a quiet classroom at the Universal Academy, a human child raised her hand. If the Reapers are scared of strong civilizations, she asked, why don't we show them we're strong together? The alien teacher smiled. That, she said, is exactly what we're doing. Humanity had been banished for being too fierce, too fast, too strange. Now those same traits, curiosity, resilience, the refusal to accept limits, were the galaxy's best hope. They had not forged an empire of conquest, but one of trust, not of fear, but of shared light. And when the stars trembled at the approach of ancient machines, it was not a council that answered. It was a pact, united, ready. And utterly human in its courage, the universe had tried to erase them. Instead, they became its voice. And in the end, that was more powerful than any throne.